Welcome to the 2018-2019 Science Assessment Reporting. We're going to hold for just a second. We're having a little bit of a technical problem on our end. We appreciate your patience. Hi, this is Noelle Gorbett, Science Assessment Specialist. Welcome to the 2018-19 Science Assessment Reporting webinar. If someone could please type it in the chat box to make sure you can hear us. The goals for this session: we're going to describe OSAS Science Assessment Development, identify available data, describe future data availability, and identify the appropriate uses of OSAS Science Assessment.
So my name is Jamie Rummage. I'm the Science Education Specialist joining Noelle today, and we're just going to give a little bit of a background of kind of how we ended up here. In 2013, ODE began the Science Standards Review process. This process entailed the formation of a 46-member Standards Adoption Committee. This committee was made up of K-12 educators, administrators, higher education professionals, science and engineers, and other folks from the educational community. This panel unanimously recommended the next generation science standards to the Oregon State Board of Education for adoption as the 2014 Oregon Science Standards. The State Board of Education adopted these standards on March 6, 2014. After that time, a transition plan was developed and guidance was given to districts on the implementation of the standards, including a timeline on the implementation of the new statewide science assessment aligned to these new adopted standards. Items aligned to the new standards were first field tested with the OAKS assessment in the 2017-2018 test administration. The first operational assessment completely aligned to these new standards was given in the 2018-2019 test administration. So just to kind of give you an overview of the changes from the former 2009 standards to the 2014 Oregon Science Standards. Here's an example of the old and new standards side by side for comparison. And one of the things you can note is the specificity of the new standards and the increased level of rigor in what we're asking students to make claims about the merit of a design solution rather than just identifying a particular problem.
This is an example of an item from the retired OAKS Science Assessment. Note the brevity and the classical multiple choice interaction type. This type of item allows for minimal collection of evidence about what the student knows and is able to do, compared to the new OSAS Science item. This is an example from the OSAS Science Assessment sample test that is found on the OSAS portal. The item includes a phenomena, also known as a scenario, on the left-hand side of the screen, and several interactions on the right-hand side of the screen. The student is given a task to complete through the interactions on the right-hand side of the screen. The interaction types vary greatly. For a complete list of interaction types, you can look under the resources section of osasportal.org. So now we're going to talk about Oregon statewide assessment system, standard setting, and presentation to the state board. After completion of the first operational administration of the OSAS science assessment, cut scores needed to be identified. Achievement cut scores were selected by a panel of educators in August 2019. It was pointed out during the meeting that the panel was almost entirely white and did not represent the diversity of student population in our state. Affinity groups were engaged to discuss the cut scores identified by the standard setting panel, as well as the resulting percentage of students proficient across the state. Affinity groups supported the recommendations of the panel and gave very valuable additional feedback on ways that we can work together to better support all students in our state, particularly historically marginalized students. Achievement cut scores and achievement level descriptors for the OSAS science assessment were first presented to the State Board of Education in December of 2019 and were adopted by the board in February of 2020. Here are the achievement level cut scores for the OSAS science assessment as recommended by the panel and adopted by the State Board of Education. Please note that students achieving a level 3 or 4 are considered proficient. Here we see our 2018-2019 state level achievement. So this is our percent proficient students across the state. Here you can see the percentage at each level once the cut scores have been applied. Please note that achievement of level 3 score or higher indicates proficiency. You may notice that a smaller percentage of students are demonstrating proficiency as compared to the previous assessment, the OAKS assessment. Please note that this assessment is much more rigorous due to the increased rigor of our state science standards and should not be compared to the retired OAKS assessment. The bar has been set higher. Now I'm going to hand things over to Cindy Barrick from our accountability team.
So the OSAS Online Reporting System, or ORS, contains unofficial data, unofficial because it has not been validated by districts. You can navigate to the OSAS portal with the link in the second bullet of this slide. The ORS has a user guide, and there's also an ORS training webinar available on the ODE website. In the ORS, you can look up individual student results, and you can also generate some aggregate score reports. For these reports, you can drill down from the district to the school as well as the personnel and roster level, and you can also get some aggregate counts and percentages for performance. The Science 2019 scores will be available in Student-Centered Staging and Accountability Warehouse Extract, as well as in ORS, on Tuesday, March 10 by 6 a.m. The 2019 records will be open for editing from March 10 through May 29 to allow district staff to verify students and apply administration codes where appropriate. The current year 2020 science test records are going to be loaded daily starting on March 10th, and those come into ODE systems about 1 to 2 days after the tests are completed. If you don't see it on your list of applications after you log in to the ODE district website, wait, did I skip that? I did. Sorry. The Science, I'm on the right slide now. Okay. The Science 1819 and 1920 test records will be editable in the Student-Centered Staging application on ODE's district website. Districts can download the records to load into local systems from the Accountability Warehouse Extract application. there is a webinar training on how to access assessment data in those ODE applications available on the district video training website, linked in the second bullet here. The summary reports, meaning performance aggregated to school and district and state levels, will be available in the Achievement Data Insight, or ADI application, also on the ODE district website. Now, if you don't see it on your list of applications after you log into the ODE district website, you'll need to request permission from your district security administrator to both the application and the Science Student Performance Validation tile within the application. We will open the 2018-19 Science Validation on April 30, and district staff will have through May 29 to make edits to the 18-19 Science records. We'll refresh the 18-19 reports during that time as changes are made. The validation for 2019-20 Science, along with ELA and Math, will open on June 11, and district staff have through August 21 to make edits on their 19-20 records. As far as reporting is concerned, for Science 2018-19, in the Science ADI validation, on the RC Summary tab, you will be able to see the performance data that would normally be displayed on the elementary and middle school at-a-glance profiles. However, the 18-19 Science results will not be displayed on the 18-19 at-a-glance profiles. We will post the school, state, and district level reports for 18-19 Science on the Assessment Group Reports webpage on the ODE public website before the end of June. The data for these reports is displayed on the AGR Summary tab in the Science ADI validation. The 2019-20 Science performance results, which will be available in the Science ADI validation on the RC Summary tab for the 2019-20 school year, will be displayed on the elementary and middle school at-a-glance profiles. Remember, the 19-20 results will be available in the ADI validations on June 11th. The at-a-glance profiles for 19-20 will be available within the ADI application on July 30. The AGR Summary tab in the ADI validations for 19-20 will appear on August 13, and the 19-20 validations are open through August 21st. Do we have any questions? We have a question. Okay. When will the 2018-19 scores be given to the media? So that those reports are going to be released mid to end of June. Don't have an exact date yet, but it'll be before the end of June of this year. And then, does permission from the old Science ADI tile carry over to the new, or is it a brand new tile with new permissions needed? It's going to be the same old Science ADI tile, so you don't need new permissions if you already have permission to that tile. Will scores be sent via the ODE student-centered ODS? Yes. Scores for both 18-19 and 19-20 will be available through the student-centered ODS.
So now we're going to talk a little bit about the right assessment for the right purpose. Looking at this image, we see formative, interim, and summative, all a part of the same statewide assessment system. Formative assessment practices are feedback discussions between teachers and students and peers in the moment. As the graphic conveys, formative assessments offer a close, discrete look at student learning that highlights important details at the student level, much like a microscope. Formative assessment offers the greatest power for improving student learning. Formative assessment is a planned, ongoing process used by all students and educators during learning and teaching to elicit and use evidence of student learning to improve student understanding of intended disciplinary learning outcomes and support students to become self-directed learners. Interim assessments may be selected by classroom educators to meet several instructional purposes. Interim assessments are typically used to determine whether students are on track, if they have mastered shorter units or lessons within the school year that have been the focus of the period of instruction. They are likened here to binoculars as the results are a little further away from the student, but the landscape and details and patterns are still noticeable. Summative assessments, like a telescope, are useful for looking at large systems from afar and identifying patterns that might not be visible at the finer grain of observation. Summative assessments are administered at the end of the year and designed to provide systems-level information for annual state, district, and school-level decision-making. It is easy to see why a telescope cannot be used to see cells, nor can a microscope be used to determine how many moons Saturn has. We would not use binoculars for either of those purposes. Similarly, each assessment serves a specific purpose and should be used only for that purpose. Please see the ODE publication, The Right Assessment for the Right Purpose guidance document on the ODE assessment website for more information. We're going to talk just a little bit about appropriate uses of assessment results. Assessments are typically developed for a singular purpose and should only be used for that purpose. Assessments should generally not be used for any purposes for which the test developer or user does not have sufficient validity evidence. No single assessment result should be used in isolation to make high-stakes decisions at the individual, i.e., student level. Statewide summative content assessment results are useful for guiding state policy decisions and making systems-level decisions at the state, district, and school levels. Districts use state assessment results to inform improvement planning and to assist with systems questions such as efficacy of a new district curriculum, new professional development plan, allocation of resources, etc. To support your district with this assessment, ODE has developed a communication toolkit. These resources can be found on the ODE Science Assessment webpage. There is a front and back page for district audience, i.e., superintendents, administrators, TOSAs, curriculum and instruction, training providers. We also have one for teachers specifically, as well as families, and we have translated the family sheet into Spanish as well. We are posting more things to the toolkit as they become available. Please be looking soon for a PowerPoint presentation that could be shared with families and other community partners that need something in a little bit of a more lay terms presentation. Also available on the ODE Science Assessment webpage, you can find the new achievement standards, the achievement level descriptors by grade band, and the OSAS Science Assessment Blueprint Summary. For more information about the Oregon Science Standards themselves, please see the Oregon Department of Education Science Standards webpage, which is also linked here. We will post both a slide deck and a recording of this video to the Science Assessment webpage, so you can find it there, and we will also share that information on the AA update. We have a couple more questions coming in.
So one of our questions is, if the scores will not be released to the media until June, does that mean they are not official and public? Can I send these scores to staff at our schools? They're waiting on this information for our students wanting to graduate with an honors diploma. So the scores can be shared with the appropriate staff that would normally get the scores. Teachers can get the scores for their students or for last year's students. you wouldn't want to share them with anyone who who wouldn't have access to them because of student confidentiality. So they wouldn't be shared with the general public or media until they are publicly released in June. But they can certainly be shared with the teachers who had those students.
We'll stay on for just a couple more minutes just to take any additional questions that you might have.
Another question, can we send home individual student reports? Yes. Some districts create their own individual student reports, so you can certainly produce those and send them. There are also individual student reports in the online reporting system. ODE won't have science reports in our reporting system until a little bit later. So, but districts can certainly produce their own reports or use the student reports in the online reporting system.
Sure. We do have,
let me, there. A little bit later, I don't have an actual date or timeline yet because we need to do some development with our IT folks, and they have not given me a date when they can have the work done, so I can't say exactly when.
okay, and my director here has given me a little note just to make sure that we mention that science assessment scores should not be used in isolation for making honors program decisions, particularly if it is used to exclude students from accessing the program. Thank you, Dan.
When will scores be sent to data warehouses via SCODs? So those are going to go in starting on March 10th. They will start flowing. We'll be loading those the current year records daily. The 18-19 records are all done, so they will just go in one big chunk. You'll get them, you'll download them, and you'll be done. Other than any edits that are made through student-centered staging, you'll want to go in and update your records once records have been changed. But otherwise, that's how they're going to be coming through.
We'll stay on for just a minute more in case there are any other questions. Thank you for your time this afternoon. And also, please feel free to contact us via email or telephone if you have additional questions that you'd like to ask us that way. Have a wonderful evening. Brina, oh, are we still on? Okay. We have, what's the timeline between when a student submits a test and it is scored and in ORS? When the student submits the test, it should be 1 to 2 days before it'll be available in ORS. Have a great evening.